Okay, so this is Angie interviewing Cathy Morgan, who's been doing some amazing research and bringing her work right up to date. Cathy Fox on her blog rightly described Cathy Morgan as leading the field with research into, I don't like to use the term MK Ultra, but nefarious no consent programs, particularly around eugenics and around social engineering, mind control, and clinical trials, basically going on since World War II, building on what happened, with Nazi scientists in the Holocaust, and work that was going on before then, if we're honest. You can keep tracking back, but we're concentrating on the years since, really, the late 40s, early 50s, and Cathy's just joined dots in a absolutely evidence-based way and documented everything, which is, although it's academic, but it's important to do, and helps people, put their own history together and identify which and what and where and how.
Oh yeah, what did you live Bath?
Right, so 1957, 1967, 68, 69, I think, 69.
Right. I discovered that 3.6 miles from where Swainswick, there's the Bath Institute of Medical Engineering. So I'm looking at who's on this board of medical engineering, and you've got my neighbour, Sir Edward Brown, the MP for Bath, whose house I'm in, playing with his grandson, going to parties at his house. He's coming to visit my dad. He's on this board of engineering. So I'm thinking, right, let's look who else is on this board of engineering. This started, they must have been getting it together around 67. It started in 68. The first minutes were published 69, 68 to 69. So the minutes contain everyone that's in and what they do. So you've got, oh God, where to start? You've got the big shots in eugenics, the big shots, I'm not kidding you, they're really up there. So you've got Robert Platt, who was president of the British Eugenics Society. He's colleague and collaborator with Alan Parks, who is head of the Family Planning Association and who founded the Galton Institute.
I've never heard of the Galton Institute.
Right, the Galton Institute is the new name for when they changed the name of the Eugenics Society to the Galton Institute so that it didn't have a Nazi association, so he headed it and financed the journal, and he's the real top. Now this guy here, Solly Zuckerman, I've put in because although he wasn't on the board until 1985, he's intimately connected with a lot of the people that were on the board when we were there, but he's also helped design the NCDS survey that I was part of. No, I've just found so much out recently. But he was doing a massive study, huge amount of funding for years on chimpanzees, because they were all zoologists as well. Chimpanzees for the RAF.
I'm so glad we're taping. Do you want me to shut that window behind you? I'm going to go and shut up his draft. You carry on. Stay comfortable. Oh
okay,
God.
so Solly Zuckerman, RAF, so that's a...
Wow.
That's a link to the RAF anyway, there.
Wow.
But not only was he doing that, he was also a collaborator with Alan Parks, the head of the eugenics guy. He collaborated with him too. And he also worked with James Douglas, who actually implemented the NCDS survey, and also worked on the chimpanzee studies under Solly Zuckerman, and then he designed the NCDS survey. So you've also got, you've got links to Robert Platt was a member of the Athenaeum Club where I ended up working. And we've got links now, other links here. It's hard to read this. Oh yeah, this is an interesting one. So donating to the Bath Institute. Not many donators, but one that jumped at H.S. Rothschild. Who's H.S.? You know, couldn't find a thing of him. He's been airbrushed from the internet, which got my attention up. So then I started really digging to find him, because when they've been airbrushed like that,
What's airbrush?
Airbrushed.
Oh, airbrushed out. Yeah.
So I find out that H.S. Rothschild was he was a film director in America for Arrow Films. He made a lot of early films, and his wife was Alison Ames, who was actually at the Council of Nine channelings with Andreja Pahoric of MK Ultra.
I don't know what the Council of Nine channelings is.
Okay, the Council of Nine channelings were conducted by Andreja Pahoric, who's well known for bringing Uri Geller to England. He was researching all sorts of paranormal experiences for the MK Ultra, but he was also developing implants, radio tooth implants, and ways of implanting hypnotic suggestions into people's minds without them knowing it was happening with electromagnetic waves. So how people came to believe that the Council of Nine was real when he was researching on the hypnotic suggestion, it means that this was probably fake, the Council of Nine. It's like a channeling of spirit, of God or something, you know, that telling them what
So
the answers
hearing
to
voices.
the
I
universe.
watched a video about
Hearing
that
voices.
yesterday.
Now, the Council of Nine, when Andreja Pahoric was there, Alison Ames was one of the people that attended, as was Gene Roddenberry, who wrote Star Trek, who incorporated a lot of the stuff into Star Trek. So this is media manipulation, this is social control. Now, the amazing thing is, and as I say, he was clearly tied up to all the electromagnetic research for MK Ultra, not just... He took a lot of special psychic kids, and they were channeling the Council of Nine too, which is another story really, because Werner Erhard was there. He was with Andrew Pahoric and doing the Council of Nine channelings, and also there was, this is in Stone Tony Bloomfield. He described him as a close friend, and he formed a foundation with my partner, Godfather, and who was in 1001 Club, which is a really secret club of
That's
top
the one
elites.
where my president of the bank I worked, BCCI president, was in.
Right, was
Was it
Chelford?
Was it the 1001 or was it the 1100? You know, I think it was that club.
Yeah,
Do you remember
1100.
Arga Hassan Abadi?
Right.
Remember we found that he was
Yeah,
in that?
yeah.
And he was my boss. Well,
Yeah.
he was the president of the bank, BCCI.
Right, yeah, he would be like very likely candidate there. So
No, he is. We found evidence of that. It's on the list.
So Inston Bloomfield, right, is a director. Now on the Bath Institute of Medical Engineering, there's a guy called G. Clarkson, whose only thing is that he's from Dornay Day Bank. Husband's mate, Godfather's mate. This all links into Paperclip.
Right.
Not just German doctors coming over after the war, as was Paperclip, but there's this huge movement of Jewish doctors before the war. So that Jewish doctors doing similar experiments as were done in the concentration camps, except that they were taken to extremes in the concentration camps. The Jewish doctors were all placed right at the heart of their speciality in either America or England. So the top sort of virologists would be suddenly find themselves with all the major stuff going on in England, and they'd run the departments. So it's not just Paperclip. The World War seems to have been deliberately to put, there were many reasons, but one was to get these Jewish doctors working with their counterparts and with people that could look at all different aspects of the human being and how they ticked.
Because one of the ways they portray it nostalgically is that Jewish doctors would be inmates in the concentration camps, and they would have their lives spared if they agreed to work as a doctor. That would save their life. You've seen it, well, I've seen it in movies. So they would reluctantly agree to use their medical knowledge whilst being an inmate, and they would reluctantly cooperate, and the movies show them sympathetically showing favour and helping people not suffer as much. But that could just be a romantic cover-up.
So much spin around the wars, and I think they're both false flag events.
Yeah, I do too.
So You know, my grandma used to say, oh yeah, this is another, oh yeah, no, we'll go to Barcroft now because...
This is amazing.
You know, my grandmother used to say that there's connections to Lady Moran and Lady Morrison. So Lady Moran, I found, is a pupil of Joseph Barcroft, who worked for the Nuffield Foundation, who funded the Bath Institute and funded the NCDS.
Nuffield Lodge keeps coming to me as
Nuffield, that's where they did a lot of this.
Is that near Rudloe Manor?
No, it's not, but a lot of the people at the Nuffield, around Lord Nuffield, now this is so interesting.
It's very familiar to me.
Right, well, Lord Nuffield was William Morris, who produced all the cars, and he made absolutely millions. So then he's getting cultivated by these medical people, the surgeon of the King, called Farquhar Buzzard, the chairman of Barclays Bank, called William Goodenough. They're all approaching him to get money from him for this new Nuffield Tower of the Winds, it's called, and it's a tower in Oxford where they started madly, insanely, barbarously cutting up loads of fetuses and mothers giving birth, and it was all about the first moment and the placenta barrier and the cord and the brains and the chemicals and electronic impulses, and it was all done in this Tower of the Winds.
And that's where they're trying to seek that elusive elixir of life, whatever.
Yeah, well, they did find
whatever.
everything that there was to find. The astronomers were in it for a year. It was built, the Tower of the Winds at Oxford was built to measure the transit of Venus across the sun, so the UK could fine-tune their nautical instruments so they could colonise the world. So the Tower of the Wind was a copy of one at the Vatican, one in Greece, and in 1760 it was made so that Britain could colonise the world, so that it could take over. Now, in 1935, Lord Nuffield bought it for the embryologists initially to bring in all the mammals and fetuses and start finding out how they take. And astronomers were in there for a year. Well, there's something really Illuminati about this. And then the astronomers moved to Bath. The astronomers moved to fucking Bath. Of course they did. So if we have Barcroft here, this Tower of the Winds found in this embryology. So then...
Just clarify for me what you think the embryology research was trying to nail down.
It was getting huge numbers, and it was every aspect. They wanted to find out about breaking the mother-child bond, of course.
Yeah, that was one of the basics.
And they studied every chemical aspect you can find out, chemical, hormonal. But he said when he initiated the whole study, he said, our main aim is to find out how humans work.
There's an occultic thing where it's so sick, it's the Frankists and all of that, and that they believe the horrification ties in, but also the child with the purity, that if you kill a pure child, then at the moment of their soul expiring, they can ingest some chemical or some whatever that will prolong their life, the elixir of youth.
Well, what is very worrying is that this guy, Alan Parks, ushers in the Abortion Act with David Steele, and then you've got hundreds of thousands of fetuses.
I swear that's for more supply.
Fetuses for supply.
Yes, that's for more supply, I'm sure it is.
Yeah, so...
That was for population control, but it was also for this thing. It was two threads to it. One was the purity of a child born, and so they would sacrifice babies even out. They abort them and sacrifice them and so on. And one is they have this crazy belief that if they ingest that, whatever it is that is released, that they'll have the elixir of life. And the other was the horrification thing. So if you sacrifice somebody at the peak of adrenaline flood,
fear,
they reckon it's more addictive than cocaine or heroin or anything like that. Adrenochrome.
Yeah, I heard that. Yeah, I'm sure that plays a big part.
So the abortion thing definitely, it ties in on two levels. It ties in with population control, but it also ties in with an endless supply of fetuses.
You've got it there. Now, he was working with Henry Dale he was his sailing buddy. Henry Dale was the guy that brought in these scientists, and all this seems
from Germany, the Nazi ones.
Yeah, Henry Dale, and all this seems to be connected to a club called Tots and Quarts now. I found this club that seems to describe all this. But, of course, do you remember Lady Morrison was also hanging around? She went to the convent with my grandma, and she was around my Auntie Winnie. She was her best friend, Lady Morrison. Now, Lord Morrison was on a panel with... Where's Lord Morrison now? Lord Morrison. Herbert Morrison, that's it, her husband, was on a panel with Barcroft.
It's absolutely brilliant.
Henry Dale, the guy bringing in the paperback guys.
You could get this, unless you want to do it all again, you could get this photographed and blown up. Hang it on a work wall.
Like another 64, there's another 100 nodes to go on it, because they all connect with each other. Because it's like, when you look at these are all separate things from my life, and it's when they all connect with each other. Swainswick, okay, when the war came in, Barcroft and his medical colleagues who were doing this research parks, they took over the food supply. They centralised the food supply. They were looking at chemical analysis of the food and how it affects the brain, and then they take over the food supply, and they're doing hormones in milk and eggs. I don't know what they were doing with eggs, I'm not going to say that yet. Beef, they literally took it over to the Ministry of Agriculture, and guess where the Ministry of Agriculture kept their records? It's Oriel College, Swainswick.
We were in the snake pit.
And it goes to really high, this is really high level. We were some sort of experiment that was really high level because of these sort of the calibre of the people around here, you know, these eugenicists and that.
It was an outpost, it was a very convenient outpost.
Well, Douglas, who designed the NCDS survey, definitely I found now that he was surveying the parents as well. So sure.
I'm sure it's at least 3 generational.
But he also was studying what happens, why children what happens at the age of 11 was crucial when they go into comprehensive. What can stop a child who's had a good education from achieving once they go to comprehensive? So they put us down in Bath till we're 11, give us a great education, and then they took us back to Rochdale. But I think that they might have engineered the sexual abuse by my father to see how that impacts on somebody's life in the future when they've had a good upbringing and all this. It fits right in with what the descriptions. I only found them yesterday of the experiments, the day before yesterday.
You put them on your blog?
No, I haven't. I've just been trying to digest it. You know, it fits in with all the theories we had when we were saying maybe it was this, maybe it was delinquency, maybe it was... And all the theories we had are being substantiated by the research papers I'm finding now. But
the other thing is that they say 12 is the cut-off point for trauma in childhood, facilitating later programming. That ideally it's to 7, which is where the Jesuit thing comes from. Give me the child till they're 7 years old and I'll give you the man. And sodomy in particular releases a chemical up the spine that affects the cortex of the brain, that makes the brain pathways go deeper, creating artificial genius. So creating photographic memory.
That's the other sense I'm getting, that they were trying to create mathematicians, brilliant engineers.
Absolutely.
And it's through nature and nurture and whatever they had to do, they're trying everything.
So they're from 0 to 7 was ideal, but they could still get results up to the age of about 12. And so, you know, kids going off to public boarding schools, they're likely to be sodomised at the very latest by 11, 12. And it was consistently producing areas of genius. Of course, they'd be tortured with depression, anxiety, PTSD, but they would excel in certain areas, and they were able to artificially create that. So
we were like early prototypes, probably.
Enrolling the parents is a huge part, because the parents are the ideal handlers, unless they're in boarding school, where you can just strategically place housemasters.
Oh yeah, I was telling you about Carol. So she said, oh my God, I was in a care home near there. She told me the name of the village, and I looked at 6 miles from Swainswick, and she was taken at the age of 13, 11.
Oh, right.
She was in care from the age of 9. She's amazingly endowed with huge breast when she had from the age of 9. Her stepfather was sexually abusing her, but nobody would listen to her. So then when she got a boyfriend at 17, there was uproar. He was put in prison, hung himself. She was put in care, out of control. then there was all sorts going on between Liverpool and Wales, and then she was moved to Bath with this order of nuns called, it was the ones that ran the Magdalene laundries, the Good Shepherd, and there was another one, Sisters of Mercy, at this place near Swainswick, and just a small group of really bright girls. She did her GCSEs at 13. She's just won a competition for designing a drone camera. She's really bright. And she said there's something really odd about her. I said, it turns out you were part of a programme there. And she remembers waking up in one town and then putting her down and waking up in another town drugged and stuff like that. So, and she said the nuns insisted that she smoked, so she didn't smoke, but they made her have cigarettes. And I said, that's a behavioural programme.
Oh, no, somebody's contacted me about that from Manchester, actually, and said that the drugging through cigarettes was huge.
Well, they insisted that she smoked, and then you'd only get cigarettes when you were good then as well.
Drugging, sweeties and cigarettes. Sweeties for treats and cigarettes. And I didn't know about the cigarettes thing, because I was just saying to him, I know it's an implanted addiction, I know it's an embedded thing that was, for whatever reason, and he said no, drugging was huge.
The tobacco company, they're really tied up in all this. All the big shot guys were part of the tobacco companies, the big shot scientists, and they were doing loads of testing on cigarettes. And the same with, it wasn't just LSD, it's like MK Ultra was a cover story for the real stuff is in the published academic literature. It's all there.
The other thing I'm curious about is that I know instinctively that, because the MK Ultra official story is that America imported all the Nazi scientists, and I know that the British establishment were the brains behind it, and they used America as an outpost in the same way. There's great snobbery within the British establishment, and so I think they farmed it out to America and let them take the heat if ever the heat came.
Yeah.
But they stayed very much invisible and under the radar and just putting the money out there and making the committees and giving the instructions and so on. And I really would like to prove that. I really would like to prove. I know it intuitively. I know the British establishment and the military were huge in overseeing it all. A bit like colonisation.
One of the people that was a victim of the radiation trials that were connected with MK Ultra, she said that when she was 9, she was made to sleep with older men and filmed, and she named the people, and some of them were people that were running MK Ultra
in America.
Yeah. Okay. And the guy that did the hearings,
in England.
Frank Church, no, in America.
In America, right.
Frank Church, who did the hearings about MK Ultra, he was one of the ones she said named as having been. So they were compromised all the way.
Of course they were.
So it's just a big psyop in a sense, MK Ultra. It's exposed the experiment, but it's kind of put it all over there in secret, where it's all really going on.
Absolutely, that's my point. Absolutely. And as well, I don't believe it was accidental that 15,000 documents didn't accidentally got left out.
It's too much.
No, that I don't buy that.
It's been contrived.
That was a controlled release of info, and it would make sense if it was hiding a bigger picture. And the other thing I'm convinced about is that the military also set up that hospital in Germany, probably other places too, for the European wing of it. It's safely out of England, but it's controlled by the military.
These German places in the 30s, what was going on there, for example. Yeah, and where these doctors came from and who they were working with before they came over, because that's a real big one. Like this Henry Dale, he brought over a scientist called Vogt, and she was head of a department at Kaiser Wilhelm Institute before she came over. And he was working on Ergo, this Henry Dale, before he went into Nerve and all this chemical stuff. And with Stahl, the guy that was Abby Hoffman's teacher, so all the LSD story is all a bit of a...
And the Farber, I started to go down that tunnel and I dropped out. I got triggered. Because because Farber was one of the first German abusers that I was fed into, but his family had been around me from infancy and from birth in that hospital.
Oh, right.
His mother worked in the kitchens in the hospital, and his wife was chosen as my godmother, which was then the perfect ruse to keep sending me on holidays there. supposedly to learn German, but he was an already flagged paedophile. And then I did some research on MPs around that time in England, and there was a Faber that was an MP in England. And I just wondered, I started, I think it might have been Max Spears, or no, it was on the Basis. Somebody called Faber commented on a Basis thread, and I asked a few questions, and then I got triggered, and I never went back to follow the thread. I probably could find it if it was archived, but it's amazing. It's just amazing. It's endless. But we'll stop. Should we stop that for now and then come back to it?
I think it's so interesting.